Night owls. What is the scariest thing you've experienced while everyone else was asleep? Posted 2 days ago. I was 16 years old at the time, and from ages 13 to 19, I was a hardcore night owl. I was at my dad's one summer, and he and my stepmom had gone to bed for hours. I think I was playing some game at the time, and the window was open. I started smelling something that reminds me of powder, and then I hear a bang like something exploding. I thought it was a gunshot, so I sat closer to the wall so I wouldn't be visible from the window. Then I hear a second one, a third. It starts to smell very awful. Then third, fourth. I can hear my dad and stepmom getting up and going downstairs. I thought they were going to have some sexy time, so I didn't dare go downstairs. Fifth bang. I sit there for a while and then turn everything off and go to bed. I thought it was some gang fight or something, though it felt odd to me that I didn't hear any scream. Needless to say, it was quite scary. Next morning I learned the truth. Turns out my dad's car was pushed into the ditch and set on fire by some guy my age who was known to fuck around and burn that specific type of car. It burned, and the gunshots were actually the tires and spare tire exploding. Now he uses my stepmom's car. I live in a desert area. Just the other night, probably around 2 or 3 a.m., I found a tarantula in our family's kitchen when I went to get a snack. Now, I'm generally a brave person, but spiders scare the shit out of me, and this was a fucking mammoth spider. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't want to wake anyone up, so I just left it there and went back to my room on the other side of the house. I didn't tell anyone in my family about it. They aren't really dangerous to humans anyway, and no one in my family has reported seeing a giant spider, so I just want to assume that it got out the way it came in, but I've definitely been getting a little paranoid about leaving my room at night. My ex used to live next to a very historical part of England where lots of Vikings used to raid, and I swear her house changed my mind about ghosts. I stayed the night at her place one night and woke up screaming from a nightmare and heard something crash downstairs. I thought I was going to have to actually fight and tackle someone as I hear loud, slow footsteps going up the stairs. I sat there, waiting, and thought I was just hearing things, but the dog was on edge, staring at the door as well. Once the footsteps got to the top of the stairs, it stopped. I opened up the door and looked downstairs, and nobody was there. The ex was sleeping with earplugs and didn't hear any of it, but the fact that her dog was also on edge made me think I wasn't just hearing things. I was a huge night owl before I hit puberty. Then something changed in me and I became a morning person. So I'm maybe 7 years old, and I've snuck out of bed in the middle of the night to play with the fax machine. I used to pretend to be on phone calls on the little phone that was attached. This fax machine lived in a closet across from the front door. We literally never used the front door, so that little alcove was free for my use. I should mention, this was a slightly rural area. Like, we could see our neighbors, but there were a few acres between us. I was playing there in the middle of the night when I hear a voice call out outside. I had never heard anything like it. It definitely wasn't human, but it was very loud and echoed through the courtyard outside. I froze and waited. A moment later, something crashed into the front door so hard that it shook on its very hinges. I ran as fast as I could to my bedroom and hid under the covers until morning. When the sun was up, I told my mom all about it and how scary it was. Turns out my mom was and is pretty prone to insomnia herself and had heard the same sound. While I retreated to safety, she had ventured out to investigate. It was an owl, a big, stupid owl, who decided to fly under our patio awning and smacked its stupid self into our front door. I'd never heard an owl call before, but we looked it up later, and it was exactly what I'd heard. The owl was fine, by the way. My mom said he was a little ruffled, but the moron got up and flew away. November 2019. I stayed up all night to watch Friends series on Netflix. My uncle and brother were sleeping on their own rooms. Each of us had his own room. Our sofa is an L shape set in the corner of the living room. Behind one of its sides is the wall, and the other one is our window. As I was lying down on the sofa, window behind me, so the fear of someone looking at me through the window was present that night. At exactly 12 a.m., I heard something behind me, something like a deep giggle, antagonists do in movies when they hear absurd things. My neck froze and I was ready to run. I couldn't look behind me since I'm a scaredy cat. I paused what I was watching in the TV and listened very carefully. About 10 seconds of steadiness and being alert, I heard it again. It's like an evil laugh, but it just hums, and it is very, very deep. I could imagine a bloody man sitting behind me, leaning his face to the window and just smiling with wide eyes while doing this creepy sound. Then it stopped again. I couldn't do anything. All I have is the remote in my hands, so I felt really helpless. After what felt like hours of silence, I heard a breath on my window behind my neck. I ran to the hallway leading to my uncle's room and banged the door to wake him up. As I was panicking in front of his door, I gazed through the window, and what I saw haunts me until now. I saw a very dirty man with long, frizzy black hair going down to his ribs. He looked like the jackal from 13 Ghosts horror movie, but his eyes are very red and his teeth are dirty and seemed like to be broken, to be like some jagged weapon inside your mouth. I don't know if that's a homeless person or a demon, but I was just so happy my uncle opened his door. I had stayed up a while, and then I started to hear the sound of the door downstairs being pushed open. It has 2 locks. One is a chain lock and the other was a door lock. I know the door lock could have easily been broken off or picked, and the sound I heard sounded like a door that was being rattled and slammed, trying to force open the door with the chain lock still on. I heard it over and over again as I freaked out and laid perfectly still as I started to cry because I thought I was probably going to die or something. I texted my sister, who had a room across from mine in the basement. I asked her to call our mom, but it was 3 a.m. and she didn't answer. Oh, and my room has 2 huge windows on each side of the wall, so that's a great thing for me. My sister finally decided to get up and investigate. The door was closed, so we checked the garage, and then my cat ran out from the garage. My cat was making those noises, crying to open the garage. One late night, I walked out to my balcony. I live on the 12th floor of an apartment building, and super thick, dense fog had covered everything. Now, super dense fog by itself isn't too bad, but I live in a really big city, like top 20 worldwide kind of big, and near zero visibility fog is not common here at all. I've never seen it so bad. It was like Silent Hill-like. Also, it was oddly warm outside despite being like 3 to 4 in the morning, so that was really weird and unsettling. It got worse when I started hearing screams though, a scream that sounded like no or help, followed by a blood-curdling, someone is getting murdered level scream. I went back into my room, closed all the doors, drew the curtains and turned off all of the lights except for the one on my desk. Something like 20 to 30 minutes later, I decided to check outside. The fog was completely 100% gone and it was super cold out. Visibility was perfect, like there wasn't just pea soup thick fog literally less than half an hour ago. From what I searched, fog doesn't vanish that quickly and usually forms when it's cold, so I have no idea what the hell happened there. Looked at the news the next day. Nothing unusual was reported though, so also no idea what the screaming was. I sleep with my bed against a large window, big enough that a 6-foot man can climb through easily. I know because I've done it. That opens up on an area that's fenced in. You'd have to go through my yard or 2 of my neighbors to access it, or 1 neighbor if you can get over a barbed wire fence. A couple of years ago, there was a couple of months when something would tap on the window at around 2 a.m. There was nothing that could naturally tap it, like a branch in the wind, and it tapped in a pattern, not like a complex pattern, just tap tap, pause, tap tap tap. I wouldn't have been in a defendable position if I tried to go out the window, as if someone was standing on either side of the window. It could fuck up whatever limb I stuck out first. I had to run around the house to check. By the time I got there, there was nothing. It did take away my last hope. I'd hoped that it was my dog who hadn't burst at all during this, but I remembered that we'd blocked off his access after he jumped through my window during a thunderstorm. At this point, I just dismissed it as a fluke, or maybe some opportunist tried then gave up when he heard me coming around the side of the house. The next week, at around the same time, it happened again, just this moderate tap right behind my head, like someone was trying to get my attention. I just about jumped out of my skin. I sat there kind of frozen for a minute, clutching the knife that I kept next to my bed, technically a straight razor. It tapped again, and I finally pulled the curtain aside, and there was nothing there. But I figured it could have been one on the side or the other. So again, I went around the house and looked in the bank, which is basically alley about 4 feet across, but there was nothing there. At this point, I was pretty spooked, just paranoid as hell whenever I was trying to fall asleep. I had tried tapping different things against my window to try to figure out what it was. Plastic and wood didn't make a clear enough tone, neither did my finger, thankfully, but steel was too clear. Then I tried something. I realized that, as I'm a nail biter, my fingers are mostly blunt, but I found it useful to keep one nail long to open things with. I tapped my thumbnail against it, and it made the same sound. It sounds stupid, but my heart sank. I just could not figure out what was going on, and by this point I was done trying. None of the neighborhood dogs alerted. It just didn't make sense. I'd considered that it might be an animal, but that would have set the dogs off. I thought maybe it was exploding head syndrome, but it wasn't loud, and I wasn't falling asleep at the same time. Nothing seemed to make sense. There was not even access for someone to throw stuff at this window. I was looking for holy water and sage at this point. I'm New Mexican, so the superstitions kind of seep in by osmosis. The idea that messed with me most was the idea that it was trying to get me to stick my head out of the window, defenseless in a dark alley framed by the window like a headstand block or a guillotine. A couple of weeks went by without any further incidents. I was starting to feel more at ease when out of the blue it happened again. It was more persistent this time, tapping 3 and 4 times, a little harder to be honest. I was getting pissed off as well as spooked and paranoid. This time I said louder and then a normal speaking voice, but not quite a shout. "Fuck off, or I'm going to come out there and kill you, you son of a bitch." It didn't stop. So I ran around again with my Bowie knife, and again it/he/she was gone. At this point I stopped caring about being rational. Holy water on the window and the knives as well as sage burned in the room, the ashes rubbed against the blades. Stuff I'd picked up over the years from my TOs, TV, and internet. About 5 days later, I was awakened by the sound of something slapping the window, then silence. Haven't heard anything since. Still don't know what happened, but I sleep with a .357 Magnum by my head with a moon clip of superstitious hollow points. Anything tries to get in that window, I'll be doing my best to make it dead. Closest I've ever had to an intruder. Stay safe, friend. Feel like this doesn't count for this question because it relates to being asleep, but did at the very least go to sleep late this night, so here it goes. I was awoken suddenly and violently one night recently by the loudest sound I could imagine, and it sounded like it was right over my head. It sounded almost as if thunder had boomed from some tiny storm cloud right over my head, or someone had taken cymbals and banged them together over my head. Not at all fun to hear when you're sleeping. I jolted awake, terrified, struggling to make sense of my situation. Was someone breaking into my apartment? Is the ceiling above me going to collapse? Mind playing tricks on me? Bad dream? Was it a ghost? Around this time I noticed what looked like flashing purple lights coming from the living room of my apartment, and at the time this felt too odd to process, as I was feeling so disoriented and confused. I contemplated running out of the house and driving to my boyfriend's place to get comfort from my sense of impending doom. But if the sound was an intruder, either in the apartment or pounding on the door, I was worried that would put me in danger. Hearing nothing else, I decided to stay in bed, uncomfortable with the now eerie, complete silence I was experiencing, which felt quite out of place for a summer night in the South, though after several hours managed to drift off into a light and fitful sleep even just for an hour or so before needing to get up for work. The next morning was doing some research, and turns out my experience seems to fit what's described as exploding head syndrome, particularly the sudden loud noise jolting me from sleep, intense fear and confusion afterwards, and strange lightning-like visual experience. The only odd thing, though, is upon telling my roommate, who wasn't at the apartment that night as I was alone, about this experience, she mentioned she was surprised to have come back to see a well-hung picture in her bathroom somehow crashed to the floor.